Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Ignition Time. In the brand new $5.8 trillion plan from President Biden, his new budget, he now has outlined his priorities. He wants to raise taxes on billionaires and large corporations, as well as increase spending on the military and domestic priorities like affordable housing and supply chain issues. This is a pretty incredible new plan from President Biden. Let's hear the president talk about his plan in his own words. Let's check this out.
Do you understand why people would believe you, as someone commanding one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world, saying someone cannot remain in power is a statement of U.S. policy? And also, are you concerned about propaganda use of those remarks by the Russians?
No and no.
Tell me why. You have so much experience. You are the leader of this country.
Because it's ridiculous. Nobody believes we're going to take down. I was talking about taking down Putin. Nobody believes that. Number one. Number two, what have I been talking about since this all began? The only war that's worse than one intended is one that's unintended. The last thing I want to do is engage in a land war or a nuclear war with Russia. That's not part of it. I was expressing my outrage at the behavior of this man. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And it's more an aspiration than anything. He shouldn't be in power. People like this shouldn't be ruling countries, but they do. The fact they do, but doesn't mean I can't express my outrage about it.
So that was President Biden, in his own words, proposing a $5.8 trillion budget. And this request, by the way, reflects the growing security and economic concerns at home and overseas. Billions are going to be set aside for police departments and the military, along with new taxes on the wealthiest Americans. Now, by the way, this is just a request to Congress. We don't know if this will actually happen, but this clearly tells us what the priorities are for the president. Let's take a look at some of the highlights of the president's 149-page budget. Number one, the budget would boost spending by 7%. Number two, to pay for it, the president proposes increasing taxes on the rich and on corporations. Number three, climate is a big theme throughout the budget. Most of the money in this budget that is allocated towards climate change would go to reducing pollution, expanding conservation, researching clean energy, and trying to make us energy independent. The next point, there's a new dedication to actually reducing the deficit. Our federal deficit is now completely out of control. The American government spends more money than it brings in. Now, here's what's interesting. Lawmakers in both parties are signaling changes in the president's budget. So it looks like there is going to be some amount of change, and the president is not going to be able to get everything that he wants. In fact, this is a quote from the New York Times. With a center-leaning budget, Biden bows to political reality. In other words, he knows he's not going to get everything he wants. Also, Biden proposes a tax on billionaires as he looks to fund his economic agenda. He actually wants billionaires to pay more. And with a $45 billion proposal, Biden takes the whole of government approach to climate change. In other words, he's going after climate change. The next point, the Build Back Better agenda is basically now a single line, no specifics. In other words, it is dead in the water. Under this proposed budget, the deficit would fall by $1 trillion over a decade. Now, keep in mind, that sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot. We are well over $20 trillion in debt right now. Also, comparing spending levels is usually simple, except this year. In other words, this year, the president intends to spend a whole lot more money to try and move our country forward. Also, President Biden requested $773 billion in military spending because of the war in Ukraine and national security concerns. The FDA's budget proposal aims to prepare for another pandemic, the next pandemic. $17.5 billion is being requested for the Interior Department to focus on climate change and tribal nations. Funding for the Justice Department reflects the priorities for the midterm elections, because if there are any problems, the Justice Department needs to be ready to be able to deal with those problems. We know what happened with the last election and with January 6th. The budget includes funding to modernize the nation's roads, bridges, ports, and public transit systems. Across the government, this budget is trying to make us stronger from a cyber security perspective, which we absolutely need because unscrupulous countries like Russia and like China are trying to attack us and engage in cyber warfare. Funding for the Agriculture Department focuses on climate change and rural development. President Biden also requests a 5% increase in funding for Homeland Security, for border security. The administration is trying to make funding for Indian healthcare services mandatory. The budget also focuses on fighting inflation, but usually it's the Federal Reserve that deals with that. The Environmental Protection Agency would get a big increase in funding as a part of President Biden's plan. The education budget would increase aid for high poverty schools and address labor shortages. The budget also seeks more money for the United States Treasury to fight against cyber attacks and enforce sanctions. President Biden also requested an 18% increase in spending to address global diplomacy, crises, and threats. And the HUD budget, basically that is the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the HUD budget aims to add 200,000 new vouchers for low-income rentals, allowing low-income individuals to have a roof over their heads. President Biden also proposed $11 billion in international climate aid to try and help combat climate change globally. President Biden's budget proposal pushes for more preparation for the next pandemic and local public health spending. The Energy Department's budget is trying to ramp up domestic manufacturing so more things can be made in America. And this is the big one. The budget may ignite a big fight going on in Congress. This is the last but potentially the most significant point for the future of cryptocurrency in the United States. The budget may reignite a congressional fight over cryptocurrency because cryptocurrency is something that is currently the wild, wild west. In fact, Roger M. Brown, the global head of tax policy at the blockchain data firm Chainalysis, said the government is increasing its visibility into crypto. This continues the trend of governments wanting more information to understand crypto tax compliance. He said, I think people will push back. So those are the highlights of President Biden's new $5.8 trillion budget proposal. There's no stimulus in there. There's no talk of unemployment benefits. This is a broad stimulus, a broad budget, and this is designed to get support from both the Republicans and the Democrats, which means there are going to be no Democrat wish list items and there are going to be no items in there that the Republicans won't accept. And that is the reality of the political climate today. And I think President Biden recognizes that his leverage is now almost gone, which is why he now needs to make Joe Manchin, the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, happy. He needs to make the Republicans happy so that he can try and push through a centrist agenda, which is basically what this is. Let me know what you think. Please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.